No one at Second Chance Ranch was expecting a delivery that morning. The fog still clung low to the ground, rolling like a living thing between the fence posts, when the sound of a diesel engine broke the silence. It wasn't the usual feed truck or a neighbor passing by. This engine was heavier, slower, intentional. By the time the trailer's shadow emerged through the mist, the horses in the paddock had already gone quiet, ears pinned forward, bodies tense, sensing something unfamiliar. Ethan Cole noticed it first. He had been standing near the main barn, coffee cooling in his hands, staring out across land he once thought he'd lose forever. Second Chance Ranch wasn't just a name to him, it was the last thing he hadn't failed at yet. And even that felt fragile some days. The truck rolled to a stop in front of the gate. The driver stepped out, clipboard tucked under his arm, confusion written plainly across his face. "This is Second Chance Ranch?" he asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "You're a long way from the auction yards." The driver frowned, flipping through paperwork. "I've got a delivery. Horse transfer. Says right here." That was when the trailer door creaked open. At first, nothing moved. Then, one heavy hoof stepped down onto the dirt. The ground seemed to shift under its weight. What emerged from the shadows wasn't just a horse. It was enormous. A towering black draft horse with a scarred shoulder, wild eyes, and muscles coiled so tight they looked ready to snap. His menere hung tangled and thick, partially braided in a way that suggested someone once cared, before giving up. The horse snorted sharply, head jerking high, nostrils flaring as he took in the unfamiliar air. The sound echoed across the ranch like a warning. Every instinct in Ethan screamed that something was wrong. The driver swallowed. They said he was difficult. Difficult didn't begin to cover it. The horse stamped, the metal trailer rattling behind him, muscles rippling under his dark coat. His eyes, deep, watchful, almost furious, locked onto Ethan with a look that felt less like fear and more like defiance. This was no gentle rescue case. This was a problem someone else didn't want anymore. Ethan took a step back. "I didn't order a horse," he said carefully. The driver hesitated. "Address is right. Signatures needed." Another snort. Louder this time. The horses in the paddock backed away from the fence. Ethan's heart hammered. He'd worked with rescues before, neglected horses, injured ones, even aggressive cases. But this horse carried something different. A tension that felt earned. Like he'd been betrayed too many times to count. "What's his name?" Ethan asked. The driver glanced at the paperwork again. No name listed. Just a note. He handed Ethan the page. "Rejected. Unsuitable. Final transfer." Ethan's jaw tightened. Rejected horses usually arrived broken, thin, dull-eyed, exhausted. This one was the opposite. Power held back by rage. A storm with nowhere to go. Where was he supposed to go? Ethan asked. The driver hesitated again. Elite training facility. But they refused him after 3 weeks. Said he was dangerous. Dangerous horses didn't usually end up at a place like Second Chance Ranch. Unless someone had made a mistake. Or unless someone wanted him gone quietly. The horse suddenly lunged forward, hooves striking dirt hard enough to send dust into the air. The chain lead snapped tight, stopping him inches from Ethan. For a split second, no one breathed. Then the horse froze, head low, eyes locked, chest heaving. Ethan felt it then. Not fear. Recognition. This horse wasn't attacking. He was warning. "Easy," Ethan said softly, voice barely carrying over the pounding in his ears. "You don't know me. And I don't know you." The horse's ears flicked. That was when Mia stepped out of the barn. She'd heard the commotion from inside and already knew this wasn't routine. Mia had come to Second Chance Ranch 6 months earlier, running from a life that had burned her out completely. Horses didn't ask questions. That was why she stayed. She stopped cold when she saw him. "Oh my God!" The horse turned his head toward her. For the first time, his stance shifted. Not calmer, not aggressive, but curious. Mia swallowed. "Ethan, that horse's eyes." "Yeah," Ethan murmured. "I see it too." The driver cleared his throat. "So, am I unloading him or not?" Ethan looked at the ranch. The sign. The fence. The land he'd rebuilt piece by piece after losing his marriage, his savings, and nearly his faith in himself. Second chances weren't supposed to be easy. He exhaled slowly. Unload him, he said. Mia's eyes widened. Ethan? If we send him back, Ethan continued, he doesn't get another stop. The driver nodded, relief flashing across his face. He loosened the ramp, backing away quickly as the horse stepped down fully, muscles tense, hooves digging into unfamiliar ground. The horse stood still. Listening. Watching. Judging. The ranch fell silent. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan felt it, the sense that this moment would either break everything or change it forever. And the horse? He lifted his head, staring straight at the ranch sign as if reading it. Second Chance Ranch. For the first time since he'd arrived, the wild black horse didn't move away. He stepped forward. By the second night, everyone at Second Chance Ranch understood one thing clearly. This horse wasn't just rejected. He was feared. The black draft horse stood alone in the far paddock, moonlight catching the scars along his shoulder and flank. He hadn't touched the hay. Hadn't lain down. Hadn't closed his eyes, not once. Every sound sent his head snapping up, muscles tensing as if expecting another fight. Mia watched from the fence, arms wrapped around herself. He hasn't slept, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Neither did I the first month after I lost everything. He hadn't meant to say that out loud. Mia glanced at him, surprised, but said nothing. She didn't need to. The ranch was full of people and animals who carried things they didn't talk about. The horse shifted suddenly, hooves digging into the dirt. His ears pinned flat as Ethan stepped closer with a bucket of grain. Easy, Ethan murmured. No one's rushing you. The horse snorted, head tossing violently. He circled the fence, eyes rolling white at the edges. The sound echoed through the night, raw, sharp, angry. This wasn't hunger. This was memory. Ethan stopped 10 feet away and set the bucket down slowly, deliberately. Then he stepped back. The horse didn't approach. Instead, he charged the fence. Wood cracked. Nails screamed. Mia gasped, stumbling backward as the massive body slammed against the boards. The fence held, barely, but the message was clear. Stay away. By morning, the ranch was buzzing. 2 volunteers refused to come back. One neighbor left a message saying Ethan was out of his mind. And then the call came. Elite Ridge Training Facility. Ethan put it on speaker. You have our horse, the voice said flatly. Correction, Ethan replied. You sent him here by mistake. A pause. No mistake, the trainer said. We paid for transport. We changed the address. Mia's eyes widened. You dumped him, she said. The trainer didn't deny it. That horse is dangerous. 3 handlers injured. 1 hospitalized. He doesn't submit. He doesn't break. Ethan felt his grip tighten on the phone. What did you do to him? Silence. Then, we trained him. The line went dead. That afternoon, the horse tested every boundary. He struck at the water trough, flipping it clean over. He charged the fence again, snapping a board this time. When Ethan approached with a halter, the horse reared, front hooves slashing the air with terrifying power. Mia screamed, Ethan! Ethan froze. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the halter and stepped back. The horse came down hard, hooves shaking the ground. He snorted, breath coming fast, eyes blazing, not wild, but calculating. He wasn't out of control. He was defending himself. That realization hit Ethan like a punch. This horse had learned one rule somewhere else. Control or be controlled. Hurt or be hurt. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. She sat outside the paddock with a blanket, keeping her distance, humming softly, an old tune her mother used to sing when panic attacks stole her breath. She didn't expect the horse to listen. But after an hour, the pacing slowed. After 2, the snorting stopped. Near dawn, something extraordinary happened. The horse lay down. Just for a moment. Mia felt tears slip down her cheeks. You're safe, she whispered. You just don't know it yet. The next day brought the real test. Ethan had to move the horse to a reinforced enclosure, one designed for severe cases. No sedation. No force. Just patience. They opened the gate. The horse bolted. Dust exploded into the air as he charged past them, straight toward the main barn, toward the other horses. "Close the gate!" Ethan shouted. Too late. The black horse skidded to a halt inches from the paddock fence, towering over the smaller rescues. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then something changed. The other horses didn't panic. They didn't scream. They stood still. One old mare stepped forward, ears relaxed, head low. The black horse froze. He lowered his head. The tension drained from his body like a held breath finally released. Ethan felt chills race down his spine. "Horses know," Mia whispered. "They always know." The black horse didn't charge again. He turned, slowly, and walked back through the open gate. On his own. That was the moment Ethan understood. This wasn't a horse that couldn't be controlled. This was a horse who refused to be broken. Later that evening, as Ethan brushed dirt from the fence boards, Mia held up something she'd found tangled in the horse's mane, a worn leather tag, barely legible. A name had been burned into it long ago. Atlas. Ethan swallowed hard. Atlas. The one who carries the weight of the world. He looked out at the massive horse standing alone in the fading light, scars glowing gold in the sunset. "They tried to make him small," Ethan said quietly. Mia nodded. "And he refused." Atlas lifted his head, eyes meeting Ethan's across the paddock. Not with rage. Not with fear. But with something dangerously close to trust. And Ethan knew, deep down, that whatever Elite Ridge had done to this horse wasn't finished haunting him. Because tomorrow, they would discover exactly why Atlas was really rejected. The envelope arrived without warning. No return address. No explanation. Just thick paper, folded once, tucked beneath the ranch's mailbox flag like someone had wanted it found, but not seen. Ethan stood on the porch turning it over in his hands, a bad feeling tightening his chest. Atlas was in the round pen behind him, moving in slow, deliberate circles. Calm. Focused. Almost peaceful. Too peaceful. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside were photos. Mia saw his face drain of color before she ever saw the pictures themselves. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan handed them to her without a word. Her breath caught. Atlas, months younger, leaner, his mane shorter, was captured mid-rear inside a sterile indoor arena. Men stood around him with ropes pulled tight, faces tense. Another photo showed him collapsed to his knees, foam at his mouth, eyes wide with panic. In the last image, a metal device gleamed cruelly beneath his jaw. Mia's hands began to shake. "They broke him," she whispered. "They tried to." There was a note at the bottom of the envelope, written in block letters. "He is not safe. He will hurt someone. You don't know what he's done." Mia looked up sharply. "This is a threat." Ethan nodded slowly. "Or a warning." Before either of them could say more, Atlas screamed. It wasn't a normal sound. It tore through the ranch like something raw and ancient, fear, rage, memory, all fused into one echoing cry. They ran. Atlas was rearing in the round pen, eyes rolling, hooves slamming down again and again. Dust filled the air as he spun wildly, smashing his chest against the fence. The calm of the last few days had vanished completely. "It's like he knows," Mia cried. "Like he remembers." Ethan grabbed a rope instinctively, then stopped himself. Force had nearly killed Atlas once. He dropped the rope. "Mia, clear the others. Now." Atlas slammed into the fence again, wood splintering under his weight. The sound of cracking boards shot through Ethan like ice. If Atlas got out like this, someone would get hurt. And they would take him away. Forever. Ethan stepped into the pen. Mia screamed, "Ethan, don't." But he didn't stop. He moved slowly, deliberately, hands empty, heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Atlas," he said, not loudly, not sharply. Just a name. The horse froze mid-spin. Breathing hard. Muscles trembling. Ethan took another step. "I know," he said quietly. "I know they hurt you." Atlas's ears flicked backward, then forward again. Ethan swallowed. You don't have to fight here. For a terrifying moment, it looked like Atlas might charge. Then, he didn't. Instead, the massive horse staggered. His legs buckled. Atlas dropped to his knees. Dust exploded around him as his body shook violently, not in anger, but in terror. Mia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Ethan knelt too, keeping distance but refusing to leave. It's okay, he whispered, voice breaking. You're not alone. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, Atlas lowered his head to the dirt. The storm passed. By sunset, the ranch felt fragile. Like one wrong move could shatter everything. That night, the sheriff came. A report had been filed. Anonymous. Claiming Ethan was housing a dangerous animal with a history of violent attacks. The sheriff was fair, but firm. If this horse hurt someone, he said, I won't have a choice. Ethan nodded. He already knew. After the sheriff left, Mia sat beside Atlas's stall, knees pulled to her chest. He's not violent, she said fiercely. He's traumatized. Ethan stared at the dark outline of the horse resting quietly inside. The world doesn't always care about the difference. Later that night, Mia found more records. Medical logs. Training notes. Incident reports. Atlas hadn't injured anyone intentionally. Every attack happened after escalating pressure. After devices. After isolation. One note stood out. Subject shows strong empathic response to other horses. Becomes uncontrollable when separated. Mia's heart clenched. They isolated him, she whispered. They tried to dominate him by cutting him off from everything that grounded him. Ethan closed his eyes. That explained the mare. That explained why Atlas had calmed the moment he reached the other horses. They hadn't trained a monster. They had created one, and then abandoned him. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Atlas approached the fence when Mia arrived. Not aggressively. Not cautiously. He stopped just short, lowered his head, and waited. Mia held her breath. Slowly, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his menere. Atlas didn't flinch. Mia laughed through tears. You chose us, she whispered. But choosing them didn't erase the danger. The ranch couldn't survive another incident. And Elite Ridge wasn't done. Ethan knew it in his bones. Because someone out there wanted Atlas gone. And they were running out of time. As the sun rose over Second Chance Ranch, Ethan made a decision that would either save Atlas or destroy everything he'd built. The call came just after sunrise. Ethan had barely slept, his mind replaying every second of Atlas's breakdown the day before. When his phone buzzed, he already knew, some instincts don't need confirmation. The county was sending an evaluator. Not next week. Not tomorrow. Today. They'll decide if he's safe, the voice on the line said. If he fails, he'll be removed. Ethan thanked them and hung up, his hands shaking. Mia stood in the doorway, having heard enough to understand everything. We don't have time, she whispered. No, Ethan replied. But we have one chance. The evaluator wouldn't care about stories or scars or empathy. They'd care about control. Compliance. Predictability. Everything Atlas had been punished for not giving. By mid-morning, word had spread. Neighbors gathered along the fence line. Some out of concern. Some out of curiosity. A few out of fear. Atlas stood in the paddock, sensing the shift in the air. His muscles were tight again, ears flicking constantly, eyes tracking every movement. The old fear stirred, just beneath the surface. Mia approached slowly, stopping well short of him. It's okay, she said softly. Just stay with me. Atlas huffed, pawing the ground once. The county truck rolled in. Two officials stepped out, one with a clipboard, one with a calm, unreadable expression. The evaluator. They didn't waste time. We'll need to see him halted, led, and separated from the herd, the evaluator said. Any sign of aggression, and we stop. Ethan's stomach twisted. Separate him. The very thing that had broken Atlas before. Mia's eyes filled with panic. Ethan. He met her gaze, steady despite the fear. We trust him. Slowly, Ethan entered the paddock. No ropes. No pressure. Just his presence. "Atlas," he said calmly. "Come with me." For a long moment, the horse didn't move. The crowd murmured. Then Atlas took one step forward. Then another. Ethan slipped the halter on, hands gentle, deliberate. No resistance. The evaluator raised an eyebrow. Ethan led Atlas toward the open gate. This was the true test. Atlas slowed. His head lifted. His breathing quickened. The other horses shifted behind him, uneasy. Mia stepped forward instinctively. "No," the evaluator said sharply. "No assistance." Mia froze. Atlas hesitated. The old fear rose like a tide. Ethan stopped walking. He turned, standing shoulder to shoulder with Atlas instead of pulling him forward. "You're not alone," Ethan murmured. "I'm right here." Atlas's ears flicked. He exhaled. And then, he walked through the gate. A ripple of surprise moved through the onlookers. The evaluator made a note. Next test. Atlas was asked to stand alone in the round pen. The gate closed behind him. This time, the silence was unbearable. Atlas paced once. Twice. His head snapped toward the paddock. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. "Easy," Ethan said quietly from outside the fence. "Just breathe." Seconds stretched like hours. Atlas stopped. He lowered his head. He stood. Still. The evaluator nodded slowly. "Final test," they said. "Sudden stimulus." Before Ethan could react, the clipboard clapped sharply against the fence. The sound cracked through the air. Atlas startled, muscles jumping, but he didn't rear. He didn't charge. He didn't scream. He turned his head toward Ethan. And waited. The crowd went silent. The evaluator's pen paused midair. Minutes later, the clipboard closed. "He passes," the evaluator said. Mia collapsed against the fence, sobbing with relief. But it wasn't over. A familiar truck pulled up behind the crowd. Elite Ridge. The trainer stepped out, jaw tight, eyes locked on Atlas. "That horse belongs to us," he said loudly. "He's a liability." The evaluator turned cool. Ownership was relinquished. Transfer completed. The trainer sneered. "Then you're making a mistake." Atlas lifted his head, staring straight at the man. Not in fear. In recognition. The trainer took a step back. Ethan stepped forward too. "You don't get to hurt him anymore." The trainer said nothing. He didn't have to. His silence was defeat. As the truck drove away, Mia pressed her forehead against Atlas's neck. "You did it," she whispered. "You stayed." Atlas stood still, breathing deep and steady. But Ethan knew one last thing remained. Atlas hadn't just survived. He had chosen. And tomorrow, that choice would change more lives than anyone imagined. The ranch was quiet the morning after the evaluation. Not the tense, watchful silence of fear, but the soft kind. The kind that settles in after a storm has passed and the world is unsure whether it's truly safe again. Atlas stood at the fence line, sunlight spilling across his broad back. For the first time since he'd arrived, his muscles weren't coiled tight. His head was low. Relaxed. At peace. Mia watched him from the barn doorway, coffee forgotten in her hands. "He's different," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "So are we." Saving Atlas hadn't just been about passing a test. It had forced Ethan to confront something he'd buried for years, the belief that control was the same as strength. Losing his marriage, his money, and nearly the ranch had taught him to build walls. Atlas had torn them down without ever touching him. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A family arrived. A mother, a teenage son, and a little girl clutching a stuffed horse. They stood nervously by the gate, unsure if they should even be there. "We heard the story," the mother said. "About the black horse." Mia hesitated. "He's not a pet," she said gently. The boy swallowed. "I'm not either." His name was Lucas. 13. Quiet. He hadn't spoken much since his father died the year before. Horses were the only thing he still wanted to be near. Ethan watched Atlas closely as Lucas approached the fence. The horse lifted his head. Studied the boy. Then, slowly, Atlas stepped closer. Lucas reached out, hand trembling. Atlas lowered his head to meet it. The connection was instant. Mia felt her throat tighten. "He senses it," she whispered. "He always has," Ethan replied. Over the next weeks, Atlas became something no one had planned. Not a riding horse. Not a show horse. A guardian. Children who were too loud, too angry, too broken to trust anyone else found themselves standing quietly beside a massive black horse who never judged them. Atlas didn't flinch at tears. He didn't pull away from shaking hands. He stayed. Lucas was the first to lead him. Not with a rope. With a breath. One step at a time. The day Lucas smiled again, his mother cried so hard she had to sit down. Word spread. Second Chance Ranch filled with visitors, not to see a dangerous horse, but to witness something rare. A bond formed from shared survival. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan stood by the gate watching Atlas graze peacefully among the herd. Mia joined him. "Wrong address," she said quietly. Ethan smiled. "Right destination." A small wooden plaque was added beneath the ranch sign a week later. Atlas, the horse no one could break. Visitors still ask about the scars. Ethan always answers the same way. They are proof he lived. And that he chose to trust again. Atlas lifts his head when he hears children laughing now. He walks toward them. Not because he's trained. But because he wants to. And every time he does, Ethan is reminded of the truth that nearly cost them everything. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is give someone a second chance.